The sun was falling behind the tall silver trees of the northern grove, casting long shadows that danced over the forest floor. Leora moved quickly among the trees, her sharp eyes scanning for signs of danger. Her long hair flowed behind her, and the weight of her battle gear pressed against her shoulders. She had fought many battles in her life, but today felt different. A strange tension hung in the air, and even Aranth, her great emerald dragon, seemed restless above the treetops. The wind carried a scent of smoke and metal that did not belong to their world. Leora had been training her daughter Lycia to understand the ways of the forest. The child had a natural curiosity and a lightness in her step that reminded the Queen of the days before war had darkened their kingdom. Today, Lycia had wandered farther than usual, following a small bright bird through the thick underbrush. Leora had gone after her, calling her name, but a sudden explosion tore through the grove and threw her off balance. The sound made every leaf quiver and the ground shiver under her boots. She ran faster, knowing in her heart that Lycia was close. Through the smoke and falling leaves, Leora saw a figure lying over her daughter. It was a human, the likes of which she had rarely seen in these parts. The human was a young woman, her hair tangled and clothing torn from the blast. She held Lycia tightly with her arms wrapped around the child as if she were shielding her from the world. Leora felt a surge of mixed emotions, shock and awe ran through her veins. This human had thrown herself between Lycia and the force of the explosion absorbing the impact with her own body. The human did not move despite the pain that must have coursed through her. Blood stained the edges of her clothing, and the earth beneath her was scorched. Yet her grip on Lycia never faltered. The child's small hands clung to the human with a mixture of fear and trust. Leora could not comprehend the courage of someone so fragile appearing to withstand such force. She looked to Aranth above. Her dragon hovered low, wings spread wide and eyes glowing like molten gold. The dragon circled the human, slowly assessing the situation. A hiss of smoke escaped its nostrils, but it made no move to attack. Instead, it hovered protectively as if understanding the human's intention. Leora ran the last few steps and knelt beside them. She reached out carefully, touching Lycia and then the human. The warmth of life still pulsed in the human's body, and she sighed in relief. She looked into the human's eyes and saw them clouded with pain but still steady. She had faced death and fear and had chosen to protect her daughter. Leora's voice was calm but full of authority. She asked who she was and why she had come. The human shifted slightly, trying to answer, but her strength was failing. Leora called for her healers to come quickly and lift the human to safety. Aranth landed beside them, letting out a low rumble that seemed to encourage them to move. The human allowed herself to be carried, though her eyes never left Lycia. She whispered softly to the child, comforting her in a strange melodic voice that Leora could not place. The child relaxed in her arms and looked up at Leora with wide eyes full of trust. The queen felt a swell of emotion. In all her years of ruling, she had never seen such bravery and selflessness in anyone, especially from a human. She guided them toward the sanctuary. The paths were narrow and twisted, and she could see the tension in the human's every movement. The forest around them still echoed with distant blasts, and the smell of smoke grew stronger. They moved through the trees with care, careful not to draw attention from the invaders, who were still out there waiting. The human's face was pale, but she held her posture straight as if refusing to show weakness. Leora realized the human was exhausted, but there was a fire in her eyes that spoke of determination and courage. She wondered what had brought this human so far from her own lands, and why she had risked everything for a child she did not know. Aranth flew above, guiding them silently, as if the dragon itself understood the importance of this moment. The human's hand brushed Lycia's hair, and she smiled faintly despite the pain. Leora saw a glimpse of strength and resilience that was rare in her world. They reached the sanctuary at last, a strong stone building surrounded by protective wards and shields. The healers rushed forward, taking the human from Leora's arms. They set her down gently and began to examine her wounds. Leora watched closely, noting how the human endured the pain without complaint. The queen could not hide her admiration, and she realized that this human was more than she appeared. There was a quiet bravery and a sense of purpose that radiated from her. Lycia ran forward to Leora and clung to her side, looking at the human with wonder. The child did not speak, but the trust in her eyes was clear. Leora turned back to the human, whose eyes followed them both. She nodded, slightly acknowledging the queen, silently promising that she would do everything she could to protect the child. Erinth settled nearby, curling its tail around itself and lowering its head in a gesture of acceptance. Leora felt a mixture of relief and curiosity. The human had risked life and limb and now stood before them, breathing but wounded. The forest around the sanctuary was quiet for a moment, and even the smoke seemed to pause, as if holding its breath in respect for the courage displayed. Leora decided to stay with the human until the healers had assessed the full extent of the injuries. The human's body was strong yet worn, but there was something extraordinary about her resilience. Leora could feel the presence of a quiet power within her, not just strength of body, but strength of will. She observed the way the human's chest rose and fell with steady determination, even when her limbs shook from pain. There was no hesitation in the way she had acted, only pure instinct and bravery. The queen's heart felt a strange warmth, knowing that someone like this human had entered their world. It was a rare and precious gift in times of war. Hours passed as the healers worked, carefully stitching wounds and mending broken bones as best they could. The human lay quietly, letting the process happen, her eyes focused on Lycia, who had finally drifted to sleep in a small cushioned cot nearby. Leora remained by the bedside, watching over both of them and thinking of what she had witnessed. The courage displayed was not just physical, but deep within the soul, a strength of spirit that was rare and extraordinary. Erinth dozed lightly nearby, wings tucked around its body, but the dragon's eyes never fully closed, watching the human with a silent acknowledgement. Leora felt a connection forming, a bond of respect and understanding with the human whose name she still did not know. This stranger had faced the horrors of war and chosen to protect life, even at great personal cost. The queen knew that this was only the beginning of something far greater than she could yet comprehend. The morning sun cast a pale light through the stained glass windows of the sanctuary. Leora walked slowly among the wounded, her mind still heavy with the events of the day before. The forest outside was quiet, but tense, the silence carrying the memory of explosions and screams. Lycia slept peacefully in a corner of the room, her small chest rising and falling with gentle rhythm. Erinth lay nearby, curling its long emerald tail around itself while keeping one eye on the doorway. The dragon's presence filled the room with power and reassurance. Leora's gaze shifted to the human who had risked her life. Claire was still resting on a soft cot, her breathing steady, but eyes closed in an effort to gather strength. Her body was bruised and blood had dried on her skin, but the fire in her spirit remained. Clear, Leora knelt beside Claire, studying her face. There was a quiet strength in the human that went beyond simple courage. The queen could sense that this was a person who had faced danger countless times and had chosen to act with honor and care. Leora's mind raced with questions about the human's past and the life that had shaped such resilience. She wished to understand the motives behind the fearless act of shielding Lycia from certain harm. The human had risked everything for a child who was not her own, and in doing so had shown a level of selflessness that few could comprehend. Erinth stirred slightly and gave a low rumble as if acknowledging Leora's thoughts. The dragon had watched the scene unfold with keen awareness and had chosen to protect the human despite the chaos around them. Leora reached out her hand, slowly brushing Claire's hair back from her face. The human stirred slightly, opening her eyes to look at the queen. There was no fear, only determination. Leora felt a mix of relief and respect as she observed the human's gaze. She nodded silently and then motioned to her attendants to bring food and water. As Claire began to regain strength, she sat up slightly, leaning against the pillows. Her movements were careful and measured, yet there was a sense of readiness in every gesture. Leora asked softly about the events that had brought her to the grove. Claire took a deep breath and began to speak, her voice calm and steady. She explained that she had been traveling through unknown lands, seeking shelter and information about the invaders who had attacked her own homeland. She had heard rumors of the forest being threatened and had arrived to help those in need. When she had found Lycia in danger, she had acted without hesitation using instinct and training to protect the child from harm. Lior listened intently, her mind absorbing every word. She realized that Claire's actions were not random, but part of a larger pattern of courage and dedication. The healers entered quietly, checking on the human and administering herbs to aid in recovery. Claire accepted their care without complaint, focusing her attention on Lycia and the safety of the child rather than her own pain. The queen watched closely, noting how the human's resolve remained strong despite injuries that would have felled most warriors. Arinth shifted its massive head toward Claire and lowered it slightly. The dragon's eyes reflected a strange recognition and respect. It was as if the dragon had sensed a bond that went beyond species and understood the role Claire would play in the coming days. Liora felt a strange warmth in her chest, knowing that the human and her dragon had acknowledged one another. There was a sense of alliance forming in that quiet moment. The forest outside still held danger, and the invaders had not retreated. Liora knew that the sanctuary would not remain untouched for long, and that Claire's presence might become vital in the defense of their home. Later that day, Liora brought Claire to the council chamber, where the generals and advisors were gathered. The room was filled with tension as the discussion turned to the strategies for protecting the kingdom. Claire moved with a quiet confidence, observing the maps and listening to the plans. She offered suggestions and insights, drawing from her experiences in other lands. Liora watched as the human's mind worked swiftly and precisely. Each word carried weight and showed a deep understanding of tactics and human behavior. The council was taken aback at the clarity of thought and the courage with which Claire spoke. Liora could see that this human was unlike any she had ever encountered. She carried not only strength of body, but clarity of mind and depth of understanding that made her an invaluable ally. As the afternoon sun lowered toward the horizon, Liora took Claire aside to speak privately. She asked about her past, about the people she had defended and the battles she had fought. Claire spoke honestly, without pride or arrogance, describing the hardships she had endured and the lessons she had learned. Liora felt a deep respect growing within her. The human's life had been one of challenges and danger, yet she had emerged strong and compassionate. The queen knew that such a person could not be ignored, and that the bond forming between them could change the fate of the kingdom. Arinth followed silently beside them, sensing the gravity of the moment. The dragon's presence was comforting yet powerful, reminding Liora that their world was not only fragile but resilient in ways that few could predict. Claire's eyes met the dragon's, and for a moment the room seemed to hold its breath. The silent acknowledgement spoke of trust and understanding. Liora realized that this human and her dragon were connected in ways that might hold the key to their survival. She felt a sense of hope rising within her that had been absent since the beginning of the war. Night fell over the sanctuary and the forest outside. The stars twinkled above, casting pale light over the walls. Liora returned to the room where Claire rested. Lycia slept nearby, and the dragon lay coiled on the floor. Liora stood quietly watching the human sleep, her mind filled with thoughts of the future and the challenges yet to come. Claire had entered their lives as a stranger, yet had proven her loyalty and courage in ways that could not be ignored. The queen knew that the coming days would test them all, but with this human by her side, there was a chance for hope and victory. The forest outside whispered softly in the wind, carrying the promise of strength and resilience as night embraced the sanctuary and all within it. The next morning, the sanctuary was quiet but tense. Liora moved among the rooms, checking on the wounded and speaking quietly with her advisors. The forest outside was calm, but the queen knew that peace was fragile. The humans who had attacked before could return at any moment. She thought of Claire and the courage she had shown in protecting Lycia. The human had not only survived the blast, but had done so with determination and clarity that impressed even the most seasoned elves. Liora could not help but feel a growing respect and curiosity for her. Claire sat in a small room, tending to minor injuries still lingering from the explosion. She moved carefully, as if each movement required thought and precision. Her eyes wandered to the window where sunlight fell across the room, casting gentle light over the floor. She had faced many battles in her life and had seen suffering and fear in countless places. But here she was in an alien world protecting a child who was not her own. She thought of the moments when she had thrown herself over Lycia, shielding her from harm, and felt a quiet pride mixed with relief. Despite the pain, she felt strength rising from deep within her. The human knew that her presence had changed the course of events for the queen and her daughter. She understood the responsibility she now carried and accepted it. Without hesitation, Arinth paced near the room, watching Claire with its great green eyes. The dragon had sensed something unusual about the human. There was a bond forming between them that went beyond simple alliance. The dragon's instincts told it that Claire could help protect not only Lycia, but the kingdom itself. Arinth let out a low rumble as if affirming its trust and respect. Claire looked at the dragon and nodded slightly, acknowledging the silent understanding. The moment was quiet, yet filled with unspoken promises and awareness of the challenges that lay ahead. Leora entered the room and took a seat across from Claire. The queen studied her closely, noting the determination in the human's eyes. Leora asked about her past experiences and battles she had faced. Claire spoke calmly, describing her life in lands far from the forest. She told of conflicts and struggles she had survived and of the people she had protected. She explained how she had learned to act quickly in moments of danger and to trust her instincts. Leora listened carefully, impressed by the depth of knowledge and the courage reflected in every word. The queen realized that this human was not only brave but wise and capable of strategy and insight. The healers came in to give updates on the other wounded. Claire listened to their instructions and offered suggestions based on her experience. She moved with quiet authority, gaining the respect of those around her. The elves watched carefully, noting the human's demeanor and calm approach to situations that would unsettle others. Leora felt reassured knowing that Claire's presence would strengthen the sanctuary and the people within it. The queen could see how much influence the human could have if given the opportunity to act alongside their forces. Later in the day, Leora took Claire and Lycia for a walk in the gardens. The air was cool, and the scent of flowers mixed with the earthy smell of the forest. Lycia ran ahead, chasing small birds, while Claire followed slowly, supporting herself with the edge of a stone wall. Leora watched them both and felt a mixture of awe and relief. The human's presence had brought calm and reassurance to the child. Claire bent down and spoke gently to Lycia, holding her hand and guiding her steps. The queen observed the quiet interaction and understood the deep bond that was forming. It was clear that the human was becoming an important figure in the lives of both the queen and her daughter. The wind shifted, carrying faint sounds from the forest beyond. Leora paused and looked around, aware that danger could approach at any time. The human noticed as well and tightened her grip slightly on Lycia's hand. The shared awareness of threat was silent yet understood. They continued their walk, but every movement was careful and deliberate. Arinth descended from a tree branch above and landed nearby, curling its wings protectively. The dragon's presence added strength and comfort to the group. Claire looked up at Arinth and smiled faintly, acknowledging the guardian's support. The bond between human and dragon was growing stronger with every passing moment. Back inside the sanctuary, Leora gathered the council to discuss potential threats and strategies for defense. Claire stood with quiet authority, offering suggestions based on her knowledge and observations. She spoke of weak points in the terrain and ways to use the forest to their advantage. The council listened intently, recognizing the value of her advice. Leora could see how Claire's insight and experience could shift the balance in their favor. The queen realized that the human was no longer just a protector, but an essential part of their planning and defense. Arinth settled near the council chamber, observing the discussions with careful attention. The dragon's presence reminded everyone of the power that lay within the sanctuary and the potential for victory if they acted wisely. Claire's eyes met Arinth's once more, and the silent understanding between them strengthened. Leora felt a sense of hope rising within her as she watched the human and dragon interact. They had faced the horrors of battle and yet formed a bond built on trust and respect. The queen understood that this connection might hold the key to survival and success in the days to come. As evening approached, Leora returned to the room where Claire rested. Lycia slept nearby, and the dragon coiled on the floor. The queen spoke quietly to the human about the future and the challenges they would face together. Claire listened intently, accepting the responsibility and preparing herself for what lay ahead. There was a calm determination in her eyes that reassured. Leora, the human, had proven her courage and skill and was ready to act when needed. Erinth shifted slightly, letting out a low rumble in acknowledgement of the moment. The forest outside whispered softly, carrying the promise of resilience and strength. The night fell quietly over the sanctuary and all within it as Leora, Claire, and Erinth prepared for the trials that awaited them. The sun rose slowly over the northern forest, painting the trees with gold and orange. Leora stood on the balcony of the sanctuary, looking toward the distant hills. Her heart was heavy with worry. Scouts had reported that the invaders were moving faster than expected and strange machines had been sighted near the river. The sanctuary would soon face danger that could reach the very heart of the kingdom. She turned her gaze to Claire, who stood nearby, her eyes scanning the horizon with calm determination. Despite the injuries she had suffered days before, the human seemed ready and alert. Leora felt a sense of reassurance, knowing that Claire would stand with them when the time came. Erinth hovered above the treetops, stretching its wings and testing the wind. The dragon's presence was powerful and comforting, signaling that they were not alone in facing the coming storm. The guards gathered quickly in the courtyard, preparing for possible attacks. Leora moved among them, giving instructions and encouragement. Claire joined, silently observing the troops and the terrain. She pointed out areas where the invaders might take cover or set traps. Her suggestions were clear and precise based on her experience and knowledge of strategy. The soldiers listened carefully, impressed by the confidence and skill the human displayed. Leora saw that Claire's presence brought order and focus to those who might have otherwise felt fear. The queen felt grateful, knowing that someone with such courage and insight was by her side. As the day progressed, distant sounds of marching reached the sanctuary. The invaders had arrived sooner than anticipated. Leora gathered her council and Claire to review the plans for defense. They spoke in quiet voices about the best ways to protect the child and the sanctuary while also using the forest to their advantage. Claire suggested placing lookouts in high trees and using the natural terrain to create barriers. Leora nodded approvingly and instructed the generals to implement the strategy. Erinth circled above them, keeping watch for any sign of the approaching enemy. The dragon's eyes glowed with alertness, ready to strike at the first sign of danger. By mid-afternoon, the first machines of the invaders came into view. Large metallic constructs with wheels and strange devices rolled across the fields toward the sanctuary. The guards readied their weapons and took positions behind rocks and trees. Claire moved to a vantage point, observing the movements of the machines and the soldiers operating them. She noticed weaknesses in their formation and relayed instructions to the troops. Leora watched as Claire coordinated the defense calmly and efficiently despite the looming threat. The queen realized that the human's presence could turn the tide in ways that were impossible for any single elf warrior alone. Erinth swooped down with a powerful beat of wings, creating gusts that knocked some machines off balance. The invaders responded quickly, but Claire's plan had prepared the soldiers for such reactions. They used the terrain and coordinated strikes to damage the machines and slow the advance. Leora moved among them, supporting and encouraging the troops while keeping an eye on Lycia, who stayed safely behind the walls. The battle was intense, and the noise of metal clashing against metal echoed across the forest. Claire remained steady, guiding soldiers to positions where they could cause the most impact. With the least risk, hours passed and the invaders' numbers began to diminish due to the strategy and the courage of those defending the sanctuary. Claire personally led a small group to disable the machine's wheels, creating openings for Erinth to attack from the air. The dragon breathed fire with precision, shattering the machines and scattering the remaining forces. Leora watched in awe at the teamwork and bravery displayed by the human and dragon. The invaders had not expected such resistance and were forced to retreat. The forest seemed to hold its breath as the echoes of battle faded. After the last machine fell, Leora rushed to Claire, who stood firm but exhausted from the effort. The human smiled faintly, acknowledging the queen's approach. Lycia ran forward and hugged Claire tightly, expressing her gratitude and trust. Leora felt a surge of relief knowing that her daughter was safe and that Claire had proven herself beyond doubt. Arinth landed nearby, lowering its head in a sign of respect and recognition. The bond between human and dragon had grown stronger during the battle. The council and generals gathered around them, praising Claire's insight and bravery. Leora spoke quietly, acknowledging the humans' contributions and expressing her gratitude. Claire humbly accepted the words but focused her attention on ensuring that the sanctuary remained secure. Leora realized that the human had not only protected life, but had inspired those around her to fight with courage and clarity. The queen knew that the coming days would bring more challenges, but with Claire and Arinth at her side, there was hope and determination to face whatever dangers arrived. The forest seemed calm now, yet ready to respond to the coming threats as the sanctuary stood firm against any force that dared to challenge it. The morning sun rose softly over the sanctuary, casting a golden light on the trees and walls. Leora walked among the courtyard, her mind heavy with thought. The previous battle had been won, but she knew the invaders could return at any time. Soldiers and healers moved quietly, preparing the grounds and reinforcing defenses. Claire stood nearby, her eyes alert, scanning the horizon. Despite her injuries, she seemed calm and ready to act. Leora felt a deep sense of reassurance, knowing that the human had proven herself in battle and was prepared for whatever came next. Arinth hovered above the trees, wings spread wide, its emerald scales catching the sunlight. The dragon's presence was a silent promise of protection and power. The sanctuary was alive with activity. Soldiers moved in formations, practicing maneuvers, and scouts returned with reports from the surrounding forest. Claire moved among them, quietly observing and giving advice based on her experience. She pointed out weak points in the terrain and suggested positions for archers and lookouts. The elves listened intently, respecting the humans' knowledge and insight. Leora watched as Claire interacted with the soldiers and realized how much confidence the human inspired. Every suggestion was precise and effective, demonstrating skill that surpassed expectation. The queen felt a growing admiration and trust for the human who had risked her life to protect Lycia. Later that day, Leora called a council meeting to discuss the plans for the sanctuary and the surrounding lands. Claire joined with calm authority, providing strategies that used both the forest and the landscape to their advantage. She suggested ways to use barriers to slow the invaders and traps to protect the walls. The generals and advisors were impressed by the clarity and foresight in her plans. Leora observed quietly, feeling the weight of responsibility and the importance of having Claire at her side. The human's presence had not only strengthened their defenses but inspired hope and courage in those who had begun to fear the future. Arinth circled above the chamber and occasionally descended to check the perimeter. The dragon's vigilance reminded everyone of the power and protection available to them. Claire took note of every movement and every detail, ready to act if danger approached. Leora knew that the bond between human and dragon had grown strong and that together they could face challenges that would have overwhelmed others. The sanctuary was quiet for now, but the tension in the air reminded them that the next test could come at any moment. By afternoon, distant sounds of movement reached the sanctuary. The invaders had returned in larger numbers, bringing heavier machines and new warriors. Soldiers readied their weapons and took positions behind walls and natural cover. Claire moved quickly among them, giving orders and adjusting positions. She demonstrated tactical skill that allowed the soldiers to anticipate the invaders' movements and respond with precision. Leora observed quietly, feeling both pride and reassurance. The human had become a leader and protector who could turn the tide of battle in ways that no single elf could manage alone. As the battle began, Arinth descended with great speed, scattering some of the invaders and their machines. Claire led small teams to critical points, creating openings for the dragon's attacks. Her movements were swift and decisive. She guided the soldiers with calm clarity, and each action built on the last. Leora watched as the human and dragon worked together in perfect coordination. The invaders were caught off guard by the strength and precision of the defenders. The forest and sanctuary became a maze of strategy and courage with Claire At the center guiding each movement, hours passed as the battle raged. Claire personally disabled one of the larger machines by leading a small group to strike its weak points. Arinth followed with fire and force, shattering it completely. The invaders began to retreat one by one, their confidence shaken by the defenders' skill and courage. Leora moved among her troops, offering encouragement and support while watching Claire and Arinth with pride. Lycia observed safely from behind the walls and smiled faintly, knowing she was protected by those who had risked everything for her safety. After the final machine fell and the invaders fled, the sanctuary was quiet once more. Soldiers cheered softly and helped the wounded. Claire stood with quiet strength, watching the forest for any remaining threats. Arinth landed beside her, lowering its head in respect and recognition of the human's bravery and skill. Leora approached carefully, her heart full of gratitude and admiration. She took Claire's hand gently and spoke quietly about the courage, skill, and loyalty she had shown. Claire accepted the praise humbly, but her focus remained on ensuring the safety of the sanctuary and its people. As night fell over the forest, Leora gathered Claire and Lycia in a quiet courtyard. Stars shone brightly above, casting pale light on their faces. Leora spoke softly, acknowledging Claire's sacrifices and bravery. She offered a place at her side, not as a soldier or servant, but as a trusted protector, whose courage had reshaped the destiny of the kingdom. Claire nodded silently, accepting the honor with quiet determination. Arinth coiled nearby, letting out a low rumble in acknowledgement of the bond now formed between them. The sanctuary seemed at peace with the knowledge that they were protected by courage, strategy, and the bond between human and dragon. The forest whispered gently around them, carrying hope and strength for the days to come. Leora, Claire, and Arinth stood together, knowing that no challenge could overcome their unity and resolve.